So the most beautiful experience we can have is the mysterious, said Einstein. The question I always bring to my work is, why is there something instead of nothing? I think this was the quandary I reached in 6th grade, and I've been trying to answer it ever since. And so my work has really evolved out of that question about, thinking life is weird. Why? How at all is this possible? And I think my journey in art has been trying to pursue, maybe not the answer, but pursue the question, because the question alone is delightful. And it allows me a great deal of freedom and possibility. The other big influence in my life is my family. Now, I'm the child on the left, and my sister on the other side. You can see she's very engaged with being there and smiling. And I don't know if you can sense it. I'm kind of like, what is this all about? I was raised in a fundamentalist family, and that was interesting too in itself. And then the third big influence is whatever was imprinted in me, and I don't know what it was. I don't think it was aliens, like in Close Encounters of a Third Kind, where he ended up making this pile of, this is Richard Dreyfuss, making this pile of mashed potatoes because the aliens had given this kind of symbol in his head. But I think there's something in me that I need to see, and making art is that pursuit. And I don't know what it is until I see it. And that's how I go about making art. So now you understand me in art. Another big departure influence was when in 2002, I went to teach drawing in Italy, in Florence, and I ran across Silver Point, and you can't do drawing in Florence without doing Silver Point, and I started Silver Point. So when I came back from Florence, so now you're going to see 20 years of my life. I came back from Florence, and within 2 years, this is the work I was making, which were these large-scale Silver Point drawings. And the reason they're that size was I was thinking they were the size of a mattress, and that you could kind of breathe into them. And at that point, this was, following a very, I think, traumatic experience in certainly in our country with 9/11. I thought everybody needed to breathe and have a mattress. And then, like, where does imagery come from? Symbols. The previous one was all these brains connected by the cranial nerves. And I was thinking 5 brains is better than 1 kind of idea. So I just kind of like propel forward. Things come to me. I wake up in the morning, I jot it down. If it sticks, I'll think of it a couple more times. And I think, I must really need to have to work with that image or idea. Sometimes they don't seem to make a lot of sense, and that's okay. So my work evolved from those flat mattress panels to circles and spheres and domes. And so my studio transitions depending on what I'm working on, but usually I'm working on a bunch of things at the same time, or at least surfaces are evolving at that time. And so I'm going to run through the basic way I approach making my work, physically making it. So I take plexiglass. It's formed by this company in Canada, actually, and they send it to me however shape I want. And then I have to sand it because it comes clear. I sand it. And then I gesso it, many coats of gesso, and sand that. So there's a meditation in that. But if I could hire that out and somebody could do it well enough, I'd be happy. But nobody does it well enough. So that's the problem. I'm sure many of you as artists know. You wish somebody else could do stuff for you, but they can't. You have to do it to your satisfaction. So then I do the silver point drawing. Silver point is just simply a silver wire, and I take the silver wire and I put it in a lead holder. So the underdrawing is in silver, and then I drip this ground up graphite with acrylic medium paint over it with quite a bit of water. And I just stripped it over to make sludge, because the idea is that the underlayer is dictated by ego. It's very determined and very specific, and I'm in great control. And I do think having skill, craft, and practiced approach is important to making art compelling. So then you can do whatever you want with it. But I take that skill craft, put it out there, great ego, obliterate it with the wash, which is to open it up to new possibilities. And then I heighten it with white to let emerge out of that sludge something that I need to see. So it's like bringing it out of the grayness, out of the mists. And I think then it resides kind of at this shimmer stage or liminal stage of being between worlds. Then I take a drill. This was when I was doing the fiber optics with a really tiny 1/32 of an inch drill bit and drill little holes, glue fiber optic cables to each hole, bundle all those fiber optic cables into a programmed LED light emitter. And that's how I would make the work. And that's how I make some of that work still. But I have transitioned to some other things. Once I get good at something, I get nervous. And then I have to figure something else out. So I was having shows. I would put video. That was the next step. It's like, oh, I have this outer world, this skin, this illuminated world. What would be inside, which would be the matrix or the mystery or the unknown. In this case, I took images that physicists have made of vibrating strings from string theory, but the vibration would be the same as, say, a guitar string. So, or a banjo, the banjo player back there. Okay, vibrating string. And so this video plays in the middle of the piece. To speak to that, that piece was about multiple universe theory. And I like the idea of multiple universe theory because that means in any universe, something else is happening. In one of them, I won the Guggenheim. You know, in another, you know, I'm living where it's warm, whatever. So any day that starts that maybe isn't perfect, you can turn perfect. This show, I show this image because that sphere up there is not mine, it's Russell Crowe, but I am on this wall here. And why I like this show is that I've loved Russell Crowe's work forever. If you know his work, he's a drawer. And he went out to observe the night sky and he drew it on this sphere. And I sent him an email because I was such a fan. And I said, oh, Russell, I love your work. And he emails me back, goes, oh, Carol, I love your work. He said, do you have carpal tunnel? So it was interesting because I did have issues with carpal tunnel. So I'm going to tell you artists out there, if you do a lot of repetitive action with your hand, particularly with drawing, you need to lift weights because it's only by keeping your arm muscles strong that you can avoid it. So it was just nice to have that kind of exchange. Another show, I love when museums put my work up and they hide all the electric cords because these things all light up. This is at Kohler Company up in Sheboygan. So, so that's my studio again. And it's important when you pick partners in life that you have partners with skill. My partner happened to have been raised by a carpenter, so he puts these mounts in there for me. So, you know, and he also has training in engineering, so he does the moment calculation, so these things just don't fall off the wall. Very important. And that's a learning curve in life too, because I think as artists, you go to art school and you learn to do everything yourself. And as I've been going through the years, I thought I had to do everything myself or it wasn't my art. No, I'll tell you more about that later. So here's a large dome I'm working on. And I wanted to have these internal lights. So actually, if I go back to, you can see the inside of that dome is black. Where I don't want the light to come through, I have to paint black first. Then I go on top and I paint white gesso so that I can do the silver point drawing on top of that. So it takes a while to do that because I have to paint all around those edges to let the light through. However, it's what works. Then that silver point drawing, and then after the silver point drawing, then I put these little washes of graphite, ground graphite into each of the shapes. And then the end, it was mounted on the ceiling. Now, the client didn't tell me how high their ceiling was, and I put all this effort in. This thing is perfect. It's like so beautiful. And then they put it up, I don't know, it was like, I don't know, 20 feet up there. I'm like, what the, you know, this is not right. So I hope someday she sells her house and somebody removes it and puts it down. So, and then I got work into the American Academy exhibition in New York. It's an invitational. And then the work was collected in the Museum of Art and Design, which made me inordinately happy. And that's the piece. But that also told me that I needed to take a swerve. And so I applied to the Kohler Artist in Industry residency, which is a ceramics residency. And I knew nothing about ceramics, but they don't care because they teach you everything you have to know to do factory methods, to use clay and molds and slip casting. And the reason I wanted to do this was because I knew nothing, like nothing. And knowing nothing about something is great because it opens up your mind, not just to new possibilities, but to immense failure, as well as immense solutions. So I love it. And so it was like, how do I take my drawings and make them into three-dimensional form? I had no idea if I could even do that. And I did that here. Now people tell me they look like Jello molds. I think so too, but when they go on the wall, they're not so bad. And here they're going with the Kohlerware, with the urinals and the sinks and everything into the kiln. And they come out the other side. Now, what was funny was all of the Kohler glazes were shiny, and I don't do anything shiny. So then I had to learn a little bit more about like how to impact the glazes so that they came out a little more matte. And they don't really have black toilets. I guess that would be disgusting. I don't know. But so we had to make our own glaze for this. And so here I am in the factory setting with all the pieces I made and all the pieces I now still store. And then there's all these little like windows in the top that aren't black. And I was putting little silver point drawings in there. And I also have poked holes in all the forms so that I can have fiber optics in them. So then being a person like, oh, I have achieved this. What's the biggest thing I can make there and still fit in their kiln and would be hard to figure out. So I thought I'll make this big object, which, clay shrinks when it starts to dry or set up. So it's really hard to get symmetry out of it when you keep on having to go around the ring, but I did. I made this beautiful thing. It definitely looks like a Jello mold, but it was humongous. And now I had to make a mold out of it. And they're laughing because we went downstairs in the Kohler factory. We were going to pour all this plaster in it to make the mold, and they think it's going to blow. And I stayed up all night to put those walls up with the clips. And they're like, they think it's going to make one big mess and I'm in trouble. And I'm like, no, I have this engineering spirit in me. I have this mind that's like, no, this is going to work. And it did. And there's my mold. Now I hadn't thought about once I had the mold what to do. So I had to get like this chain lift to lift the darn mold. It was so heavy. And then I would slip cast the piece. And that was all great, but the piece actually didn't like drying without cracking. It became this technical impossibility. And the nice thing about Kohler is they sent the engineers down to try to problem solve it. And we did many, many things to problem solve it, but really couldn't quite make it work. And so the piece would go into the kiln and would come out cracked. But the other artist, they had two artists there at a time, decided that he had to make something just as big, but it was going to go up instead, and, I have to say, in the end, I mean, I made the stupa and he made the whatever. So it's just funny. And then it takes a village. I came home with that mold, and before I left, I filled it with a silicone cast because I thought I can't do it in ceramic. It failed. And failure is good, but we have to chip off all this plaster, and that's what you have family for. Only family will do this with you. And we chipped off all the plaster to get that. And, after the Kohler experience, I felt like nothing was insurmountable. I could use a freight elevator. I could use a pneumatic drill. And the most importantly, I knew I could ask for help. That there's other people out there with skill sets. I did not have to know how to do everything well. This was a revelation for me. So this was my studio after that experience. And I was making stuff, and you can see the little fiber optic lights and the silver point drawing in the center. And for some reason, my galleries, they say, oh, Carol, this work is so dark. They don't like black. I don't know if anybody else has experienced that, but, I've turned to the dark side and they were not happy. So that's my daughter modeling with the work to give sense of scale. So these now are cast in fiberglass. The large pieces, small pieces are still ceramic, but the large are fiberglass. So cast fiberglass from a silicone mold, which then I made a rubber positive, then fiberglass, but I did not do the fiberglass. I hired somebody to do the fiberglass. This is a miracle in life. There's people who can do that stuff safely, and I did not have to learn it. Silver point drawing in the middle, surrounded by little fiber optic lights. So then I thought, haha, technology. I will learn 3D printing. This would be the next wave. So that's the model, the computer model in the upper corner, and then the actual light that I managed to make out of that by sending the file away. It's sintered nylon printed. But if anybody has done anything with this, it's inordinately expensive. So I could not compete with IKEA. So that experience said, okay, this is interesting, but it's for industry. Artists who do it, I don't know how they can afford it, but maybe that'll change. Then I thought, but CNC routing, that's so much cheaper, which is very true. CNC routing is a really useful technology. So made the file, model is in the upper corner, and then I made the piece. You're seeing an image of the actual piece. And what I love about that is that the piece actually looks stunningly like the model. That made me so happy. So I love when a plan comes together. So first I had to paint black where I didn't want the light to come through. And then there is the actual image of the light with these plexiglass cut fins. And if anybody knows anything about plexiglass, light will catch on the cut end of it. So I have these lines of light, like made me happy. And I have a huge one in my basement ready to go, but I never put it together because I never had a door I could get it out of. But now I do, actually. So I'll see when I get around to that. So here we have the light hanging up. Of course, it's during daytime, so you really can't see the effect of the light, but it's hanging up there. And then at that point, I was like, okay, now what? And actually, I was invited to go to Murano to work in glass. And it's so important to have these drawing skills because the people there did not speak English and I did not speak, and it wasn't just Italian, they had their own dialect actually. And so I had to do everything through drawings. And so I made drawings to communicate to the maestro, is what he was called, who made the glass. Also, I did not have to work for 50 years to get as good as he did in making the glass, and I was grateful for that. So explain to him how to make the glass and what I wanted, and he would sit and do it, which is sort of phenomenal. So you realize you can extend your reach and your vision by working with people who know how to do things, and you don't have to know everything. And so I was going to have this toroidal universe, you know, with the cosmic background radiation and yada, yada, and then these new worlds, these new possibilities kind of budding out of it. And it was following Venetian glass method. So it was great fun. And I still have some of this in storage too. So now back to that piece that was collected by the Museum of Art and Design in New York. You can see that it is so equivalent to the glass piece, right? They're so similar. So there's something there that follows through for me. So it's not like I'm really departing far even when I work in a different medium. It's really after the same end. And then I started making these spheres, and actually Tammy exhibited these here at UNC Asheville. And they light up. And these are 36-inch diameter. This is called tubes of erotic concentration. This one's called weep holes. You know, you have to drill weep holes in your retaining wall in the winter so that when the ice freezes, your wall won't break. And I thought we all need weep holes. When I was making this, it was done. And then my partner, who's here, lovely partner, supportive partner, had to put the insides in. And then he dropped the tool in it and it broke. So then this was okay. And I'll tell you about this piece. This piece was perfection. I really, it's a buckyball construction and it was going to be perfect. Perfect. And I was like, don't worry about it, honey. It's okay. and learned how to acrylic weld and put it back together as strong as ever, because acrylic welding is a chemical weld. No problem. So, learning stuff all the time. As an artist, you wake up in the morning and it's a good day when you have figured out something new. If the day goes by and you haven't learned something new, that's not all that interesting. So always learning, always curious, always questioning, but sort of staying on the same track because I haven't reached my mashed potato limit yet. I still want a certain kind of pile up. This is my gallery in Taipei. And then, events happen in your life. And when I was in Italy, I had this nighttime experience that I wanted to sort out because it was so pivotal in my mind. It was so dreamlike and transformative. And I realized it had to do with scotopic vision, which is night vision. And I wanted to understand that better. And the tree that I saw in the moonlight on the island of Murano, which guided me home, and I'll tell you this story afterwards with coffee, I thought, whoa. And then also I was feeling at a loss for illusion, the sense of 3-dimension or steep space in my work, because when you work on a curved surface, my work is not sculpture, but it takes the form of a curved surface. It actually has a limited illusion because nobody will believe you can look farther in than whatever that physical object is. And so it's limited in a sense of depth. So I'm starting that tree painting, I should say here, I'm working on the tree painting, but this is how I started because people think I'm so neat and tidy. It's not how my mind works. I start with flux and flow. So the gray geometric shape that you're looking at is actually the wood frame behind it. I have to first cover that up. I don't want it ever to be seen through the work. I paint front and back of the plexiglass to create a weird shimmer and sense that you can't focus on the work, which makes it hard to photograph. I think Tammy has difficulty probably with her own work with that too, because the minute you do that kind of depth thing, it kind of eludes you to focus. So here I'm painting the back of the work to get a certain kind of luminosity and texture, and then working on the front. Once I have the front going, then I decide what the ring pattern is. The inside is always the mystery in my work. The outside, the liminal ring, is always the threshold of where we're standing between the known and the unknown. It's made of embryonic shapes, which are still forming. So proto-embryonic, I suppose. And that come from my earlier study. I studied pre-med chemistry at University of Illinois, and that evolved to getting a degree in medical illustration and taking histology, pathology, embryology, yada, yada. I loved it all because I love, like, how are we the way we are? Why are we even alive? So, and that's how this world evolved. And so I think it's mostly the embryology class coming forward. And that's how that painting comes to life. And if you go to Han Gallery here in Asheville, that painting's there. And so if you Google online, you can look up Agnes Martin's writing. It's hard to get a hold of her book anymore. It's not print, but she writes so beautifully about art. The work is about perfection, the perfection I can form in my mind. However, the work is far from perfect and must incorporate the accident and complexity of flux and flow. And so I do strive for perfection, but what I mean by that is it has to meet my needs. It has to coalesce in a way that feels right to me. So I make the thing I need to see. And it's just like the myth of you rise in the morning only to greet yourself at night. So you go through your whole life only to realize you were there the whole time. So that's the beauty of life and art, that everything you are is already there, and putting your whole spirit into it and not letting other people tell you what it should be. So in the end, you can greet yourself. And then that's the final painting. But I hope you can see it sometime for real, just because it's painted front and back of the plexiglass. And people ask, why do you leave the rim kind of foggy? And what I like to, what I think is because I don't like answers. And so maybe this will just dissolve and become something else. So just another show. My work takes a while to make. And so it's nice that I can carry it forward and put it in other shows. So they make their way around the place. This was actually an image that I held in my head from being on a boat ride in Venice with the sun setting and these strange clouds, which I later found out were called mamantis or mammary clouds. You know, so very beautiful cloud pattern we actually get here. And I take photographs of them all the time now because they really catch me. But I thought of them as kind of primordial soup kind of images. So that takes me to the total eclipse of the sun in August 2017. And I had a friend at University of Miami, and I just like, I don't know, a week before this, because I was supposed to teach. On this date, I was supposed to be in the classroom. I was like, I cannot go and see this eclipse, and I really want to. Or I was supposed to be at a faculty meeting. That's what it was, faculty meeting. And we didn't do Zoom then. You know, that was before Zoom. And so, and all of a sudden the meeting got canceled, you know? And so I texted her, I was like, do you want to go? And of course, everywhere to go see this was booked, except for Nebraska. I don't know why. So we flew to Nebraska because that's where we could rent a car. And we had a 24-hour window. And the amazing thing is we got there and we saw it. So once it was in total eclipse, that's what the river looked like, which is sort of phenomenal. And what I was trying to, you know, I had read a lot about people's experiences. A lot of people write about this, their experience of the eclipse. And I think it's all true, you know, that it is otherworldly, it is transformative, it is unsettling. Before people understood it, it unsettled people in really kind of dramatic, drastic ways. I won't go into that. There's stories you could read, but needless to say, I did lose my grounding with this experience, and I wanted to pursue that. Like, what was that about? So research some women astronomers and research night skies and writings and poets. Emily Dickinson wrote about, I mean, Virginia Woolf wrote about it. They all wrote about eclipses. And you can see that my work is darkening. And here's how a piece starts, very fluid. That's how it ends. And it was all about the eclipse. And the first set of work I made out of the eclipse experience was my memory. I took notes, made sketches, my memory of what the moon and the sun look like. And then the kind of quality of the light in the sky. And I made the different phases, you know, the diamond ring phase. One ended up on the cover of the Manifest is this amazing organization. And Jason is here today if you haven't talked with him. Amazing organization in Cincinnati that really supports a lot of drawing, as well as the other arts and exhibitions. But they publish also this book, and it's very beautiful. And I was just lucky enough one year that my work got put on the cover. So forever grateful. And I also got the Manifest Prize one year, which I'll show you some images of. But if you don't know Manifest, you would want to look them up for sure, as a drawer particularly, but any kind of artist. So I was pursuing, there was something about the quality of light which I had never experienced before, because how do you get night during day? And Venus popped out. During the day, I saw Venus, which was just so shocking. And so here, what you can see is, or I hope you can see the warm and the cool. So it's surrounded by warm. The silver gives that warmth. The silver tarnishing gives that warmth. And the cool is actually the acrylic and the different blacks and layers. But you can see that in Tammy's work outside in the hallway. You notice how she has black and white, but it's everything in between. You know, it has all the colors in there. So it's in a very narrow range, and it's the warm and the cools. And I was trying to understand that about the light. And I thought, okay, I did it in a depictive way. Like I showed you what the eclipse looked like in my memory with the liminal ring. So the eclipse was still the mystery in the middle. But then I thought, I'm just going to do it abstractly. And I made these panels where I was just trying to get after the quality of the light during the eclipse. Layering many, many layers of acrylic paint and silver point drawing. And trying to get that feeling of shimmer and otherworldliness to the whole thing. Started to work, this was when I first started to work with metallic pigments like iridescent silver pigment and some of the others. And I'll put out a plug here for golden acrylics because I did a residency there and I learned a lot about their paints, their pigments, and working with these different kind of metallic pigments for sure. So these panels are all 36 by 36. Now, the cool thing about this one is, I don't know if you could see that kind of modeled pattern in the middle there, which looks like vibrating strings in a way. But that is layers of black paint and medium, but then on top is a stainless steel pigment and blocks the water in it. And the stainless steel has its own properties and did what it did and made this pattern, which is kind of cool. So you always have to have play and accident in the studio. And this is still how my work starts. It's a mess. But it gets honed over time, become less messy. And then the funny thing about this image, I don't know if you can see, I'll start, like something will come, I listen to NPR all the time. I'm very well informed. And then something will trigger like a book I should read and I write it down in my painting because I never have a piece of paper in my studio, go figure that, I don't know why. And so my paintings have these layers of laundry list, you know, what to buy at the grocery store. Oh, a poet's name I need to remember. And they're embedded in these paintings along with probably some hair. And then the end, in this painting, I was thinking about being inside looking outside instead of being looking outside looking in. So it's like a grotto. And I'm looking into the void. And that's aluminum leaf that's been laid. And that's 48 inches square. And so that's how my studio evolves, sort of still walking between dark and light. Between flat, square now. I do square pieces now. I was really leery of square. I like the round because it implied infinity. But on the square, the convention of the square works nicely, I think, in gallery settings. There's a pragmatic quality to it, ships well. But it was a struggle for me. So I tried to make the square so they don't feel like they're limited by the square. That is tricky. That's 36 inches square. And it is like still this thing, like I won't finish a piece until I think it has this strange shimmer thing where it's here and it's not here. It's here, it's, you know, like this, it's just barely there. Although now that my eyes have gotten older, I think my work has gotten a little more concrete, you know, because I don't think I can see as subtly as I used to. I'm not sure. Again, I was getting good at that. So I'm like, shoot, I'm getting good at this. So then I thought, I haven't done printmaking. So I worked with a printmaker and did these hard grounds on copper plate. And turns out I'm really good. You know, it makes sense. Silver point translated right into an etching tool to scribe into the hard ground and make these plates. Turns out like that fit my need perfectly. So each print I made had 3 plates. One was a soft ground, which is like the random cosmic background noise. And then I would have another plate, which would be the liminal location where I stand on the earth and peer into the unknown or the void. And the center plate was always based on an American woman astronomer like Maria Mitchell, who or Vera Rubin, and I would read their research as well as I could, and then come up with an image that I felt was a conversation between the two of us. And I would put those plates together. I did not print them. Again, I could not have printed the complexity of these plates. I could not have consistently wiped these plates to do an edition that would be perfect. And that's when you write a grant and you hire somebody who can do that for you. In this case, it was Kim Spivey, who was one of my past graduate students. And it was a project of love for both of us. It certainly stretched her skills. After this experience, she said she's not going to print for anybody anymore. But she said to me she was never such a good printmaker before in her life, and she was grateful for that. So this was the mother plate of them all, is Urania, the goddess of astronomy, or the mother of astronomy. And I loved making that plate and making that image. I based it on a life drawing I had made for the goddess in the middle. And it made me so happy because when I did my MFA, I was a figurative painter. So that was my 80s. In the 80s, I was a figurative painter. It's kind of funny. Then I did performance and video, and then I became a silver point artist. So, but it was so much fun to do Urania. And then borrow from Copernicus and Ptolemy for their worlds. And then in this case, the known universe is in the center and the unknown are those clouds surrounding it. And then the names of the women astronomers that I featured are on the banner that cycles around it, called Galaxias Kyklos, Milky Way. But then I had that image and I'm like, oh, what can I do with this? Let me do a laser etch. So laser etch it and make a plexiglass box to house the suite of prints. And I filled the laser etch with silver acrylic paint. So then I had that additioned. And this is the print when it was done because it has the 3 layers. And so it also has the modeled world behind it, the chaos, the cosmos. And these are the prints. And they're like 9 by 9 inches. They're not big. And if we had a longer talk, I would tell you about each of these scientists because they were all amazing and what they contributed to our knowledge of our universe and Hubble's law. And Vera Rubin just had a telescope in Chile just named after her. And she really improved our understanding of dark energy, dark matter. So all the scientists are important. Now, I was in a mood at that point to say, what's in my studio that I need to get out of my studio? And I had these remaining ceramic pieces I had made when I was at Kohler, but I never did anything with them. And I thought the truncated form, I would just put an image, a silver point image. And the funny thing about these images is Kohler makes this truncated sink, which I thought was the most gorgeous form. But it was plain, it was like smooth. So then I carved these intestines that wrap around like the labyrinth or journey through life. So the surrounding part is hand carved, but then slip cast. So I just had to carve it once. The sink I sealed off with a flat slab, and that's where I put the silver point drawing. And then I was thinking of, it was called Unmoored. I was thinking about, I lived in Florida at the time, ocean rise. And so it's aluminum leaf and silver point drawing of the ocean. And sometimes the ocean fills the whole thing, and sometimes there's no ocean, it's just aluminum leaf. And then I was still making these things. So I think still as a remnant of the eclipse. And back to that image, because now I'm going to go back to Taipei. Sometimes you have situations, it's not like I'm enamored with having galleries, but I think having a gallery is almost like needed for credibility in this art world day and age, unfortunately, because curators turn to galleries. I don't know why they think that that gives you standing, and galleries are tedious because they think of you in certain ways and want you to be in certain ways. Because they have to sell, they have to pay their bills. I understand all that, but and Taipei does not like my dark work. They think it's just like really dark. And also they're very suspicious of any body part illusion, like you can't tell them, oh, that's intestines. So I say, that's like butterflies. Okay, so here they were like, we're gonna do this big thing, and it was in a public space. It was beautiful. It was just beautiful in the center of Taipei. It's a beautiful building. We're gonna have all these public events, and we want you to do something big. And I'm thinking, big. So I made a video. I took all my work, and my work folds into itself, and merges into the next image. And then I put sound with it, which was really kind of beautiful. And then we had people do yoga underneath. So it's projected onto a screen that they put way up high so that people could do yoga underneath. It made me so happy. And people found it to be a very beautiful thing. And some people, like, they cried, actually, which is amazing to me, because sometimes I don't know if people are willing to receive art anymore that way, I certainly cried when I went to the Frick Museum. There's some things like a Giovanni Bellini will get me every time, so certain paintings just, I lose my bearing with, but I don't expect that to happen with people with my own work. And when it does, it's probably the most beautiful gift an artist can get, honestly. But then it'll show up like, oh my God, in an art fair. And this is actually not a horrible context, but oftentimes, and this is the gallery in Taipei, out of context, sometimes the work is just so odd. And my work likes itself. It likes being by itself. It doesn't really like or play nice all the time with other work. I like it when it's in a museum show. That's my favorite thing of all. That's my goal in life. So if any of you have connections, but I just like to think in terms too of theme and a show. And this theme, of course, was about the quality of light of the eclipse. The whole show revolves around it. You could see the Galaxias Kyklos prints on the far right wall. And it made me happy to put this all together. And of course, it started with the mysterious event that happened to me when I was in Venice, and the tree saved my life. And there's, this was, that's a 7-foot square painting, 7 by 7 feet. And I was trying, this was a astrophysicist who wrote poetry, but she also did a lot of investigation into dark energy. This is a dome. And I was thinking how we can map where we are, but we don't know how to map what's beyond our sight. Then I put a star field in the middle. And then I had the lines of light. That was tedious. Usually my work, I don't think my work is tedious. I never find it tedious. I just find it beautiful to do. I love doing it. But making those lines of light and painting around them, the black and then the white, that was tedious. That I don't want to do again. So this is the piece that I did to honor more women astronomers. So each of those lobes is in honor of a woman astronomer because of what they contributed to make this web of knowledge that manifests our understanding of the universe in the middle. And, just so you know, the Harvard Observatory and the Harvard computers were women. The first PhDs from Harvard in astronomy were women. And that whole underlying base of the people who emerged afterwards came from women. So it's truly beautiful if you read the history about that, starting with Maria Mitchell, the mother of astronomy in the US. And there's many more stories I could tell you about those people. They're transformative. But then I wrote their name on the left of each of their lobes, and they shed light into how we understand ourselves to be. And they were asking the same question I've asked in 6th grade is, how are we possible? And then this piece, I decided I would actually take the video I had made of what happened with the light during the eclipse and kaleidoscope it in the middle. 5, pentacle, Pythagoras, mystery, apple, all those things all collide. That's why I gave it that geometry. And it's a video of the river as the light changed. So here is when the eclipse is starting. The eclipse is unfolding. There's still light. The light goes away. That's how the light, and then boom, the light comes out again. If you haven't experienced a total eclipse, it is worth it. I actually went to Chile to see the next one, and also see the Atacama Desert, which is also an otherworldly place, because I wanted to understand why my reaction was so significant, why it was so important to me, like why it still holds in me in a way. And of course, I'll go see the one this spring in April. But anyways, it, that evolved into this body of work, just trying to come to terms with it. And so these are all the eclipse paintings that ended up being shown at Manifest for the Manifest Prize, for which I was grateful. And they beautifully installed it. And you can see the installation here. And I love when other people install my work, because I think in such limited ways about my work, because I see it in my studio and I put it on one wall. And it's like, oh, you could be surrounded by it. This is so cool. So it's a great pleasure when people take your work in and add to it and how they deal with it. So this shows, I'm painting front and back of the plexiglass. And I have to say, I'm proud of my little silver point moon. It looks like the moon to me. And it was mentioned people work on UPO paper. This is on UPO paper. So then I decided, now is the time to write down everything I know about the universe and believe. And so it's just a series of UPO drawings that do that. I won't show them all, but I'll show some details just to give you an idea. So I'm writing down equations, I'm writing down poetry and thoughts, and then I'm using alchemical symbols that stand in and represent something for me. So to me, these are visual poems, these pieces, and here they are on display. What I love about showing in Taipei is the people there take it very seriously. I mean, they really look at art and they take craft so seriously, which I really deeply appreciate. But they would actually hold magnifying glasses up to my work, which is funny. But I do wear a magnifying visor sometimes when I do my work. State of the studio. And then I made a little world because I thought I'm going to make myself a birthday sphere. So this was the night sky on the day I was born. And you can see the little moon. Anyways, that was my night sky at the date and time of my birth. But somebody actually bought it. And I think about it and I was like, why did I don't know. And there it is on the left. And this piece in the middle, Spiral Galaxies, was made to go in a ceiling that was going to be high up. So it's not as detailed as I normally work, but then they decided they wanted the other piece, which was the lobes with the women astronomers, and they're putting up in their ceiling. And I'm like, okay, as an artist, just move on to your next work and be glad you got a check. So, you lose a little bit of control with your work when you sell it, and people will do what they will with it. But, and I don't want to store it all, to be honest. So it's interesting. As an artist, my dream would be to keep it all. I wish I was a poet for that reason, all on one CD. It used to be CDs, but it'll be all on one memory stick. So, and I keep on making these little spheres. Those are like, my grandmother used to knit. So that's my knitting. At night, you just knit. Made a piece. I'm going to go through this quickly. I'm probably running out of time. But I wanted to do these silver point drawings, 4 panels, and I was going to talk about the evolution of the universe. And the third panel was going to be our location now. And then the final panel was, well, what's going to become of us, which will be the big bounce or the implosion. We're going to just die or whatever. But as I was making the first layer silver point drawings, I realized that they were sort of beautiful. So I photographed them when the drawing was done, and there was all this writing, my thoughts, poetry, other people's thoughts, equations, the governing equations, the Friedman equations are governing equations of the universe that most people refer to. So I was doing that, and then I thought, okay, I had all those sub images before I obliterated with the graphite wash and then heightened with white, that I would turn it into a book, which was really kind of amazing. These paintings are 36 inches square. And they sort of unfold the whole universe. And this is the universe we live in. And we are located actually right out here. Truthfully. So I love the fact that we're expanding, or are we? So here's the 4 panels together. And then here becomes the book. So then a book, I thought, I'm going to make a Vowel, which is a scientific instrument of how people navigate before we had computers. So it's a paper instrument. And so I made these drawings that converted into letterpress printed images that were then laser cut out to make a Vowel. And this became the book. So the Vowel is housed in the front of the book itself with the images from my drawings, and then it's housed in the middle binder. And the back of the book, I thought, and the whole book was black because of scotopic vision. I wanted people to open this book and it would just be dark, and you'd have to light adapt, you'd have to adapt to darkness and read the mystery. But then I thought, in the end, I'm going to give them a new world. So I made 10 different etchings of different worlds. So you don't know when you get this book what world you're going to be given, because you make your own world, because we're in multiple universes. You choose your world. It'll unfold for you. So that last image is a little copper plate etching of a possible world. So there's the Vowel, those wheels all turn. And there's a possible etching, but there's 10 different ones. And that's tiny. I mean, it's like 1 inch across. They were so fun to make these little copper buttons. Another show, this was my retirement show. I took early retirement from Florida Atlantic University and moved here to Asheville, Weaverville. Wonderful. I'm still trying to work out this idea of shimmer and light and the between. And then I was thinking how I love to ride my bike at night without the lights on. And you think you're seeing something, but you're not. You think like, is that, what are you seeing? And you're trying to get the information. So your brain is feeding you information that's really not there. That's actually part of night vision too, that your brain will try to fill in. And I was thinking about shimmer, and then I was thinking about forms that bloom at night or things that come out at night. So I was making night gardens. And then I was thinking about Agnes Martin again, and she did this beautiful painting called Milk Lines, which I saw right when I finished graduate school and went to New York. And I saw milk lines with shimmering lines of white and red that from a distance looked just like a pink blur of shimmer. And I thought, oh, that's where that first sense of shimmer came to me, was from an Agnes Martin painting. And this looks nothing like her work, but to me, I was thinking of her. So these are like milk lines, but they're hanging gardens, like the hanging gardens of Babylon, one of the world wonders. And I think about the hanging gardens. I think about them in a dreamlike way. And I'm still kind of enamored with this idea. So when I was at Kohler doing an artist Golden doing an artist residency in acrylic, I dipped these flowers into, like fake flowers, into paint and like stalactite kind of candle making. Anyways, so soon I hope to install those someplace. So now this is on a roll of Yupo paper. Yupo paper comes 5 feet wide by 30 feet long. And I was like, what the heck? They would be easy to store. Just roll them up. So this one is going to be in the show actually at Golden. And I had to photograph it. So I had to photograph it in segments and stitch it together. And so then I stitched it together. And I'm like, this was actually a lot of work, the whole effort of it. So I'll turn it into a book too, eventually. But then I thought, no. I want to do a 30-foot long one. This is only 20 feet. I'll do a 30-foot one long. This is 30 feet long, painted front to back. Then I would do the scroll painting, and it would hang as a scroll. It's going to hang in Shanghai in May. And then I would photograph front and back, and I make the scroll and have it unfold in accordion style from a book. So that's my newest project, which I'm actually writing a grant for, try to get that out this weekend, to make this into a book. So and the main reason for I love book forms. I didn't know anything about them. Now I'm interested in them. I'm learning how to make books. But also it provides an access point for people because my work gets a little expensive. And people don't have a place for a 30-foot painting. So they could have a book, and the book, when the accordion unfolds, it's 60 inches long. And in this piece, the front side is the chakras interpreted by me, and the back is my poetry. And I'm not a writer, so I'm always really apprehensive and nervous about my poetry. I try to obliterate it a little bit, but in this case, actually, I think it's going to be able to be read, which is amazing. So I think as I get older, I get a little braver. Like, I don't usually tell everybody everything about why my work is the way it is and what I'm doing with it. I leave it a little foggy. But now I'm like, darn it, I've lived this long and worked this hard. I'm going to tell people what I think. So my work is taking maybe on that kind of aspect of, this is how I think, this is who I am. And, you know, certainly my whole endeavor as an artist is to get to the possibility of complete freedom, where I make the work without caring for its place. I make the work without caring about anything other than it needs to be made, and it's the best that's in me to make. And how fortunate I am in life to be in a situation where I could face that square on now, because I don't need another line on my resume. I'm not beholden to any institution. I can tell galleries no, I hope. There's still my little edge, like, darn, I hate disappointing people, but that would be my freedom. So I want to build the tower my way, at least for the moment, because I don't believe in answers. And I do believe that everything is interconnected and everything is beautiful. And the fact that we're alive today gives us great hope. And I really loved the lecture last night, because he ended saying, you know, don't give up hope. Don't give in to stress and worry, that artists are out there and it's beautiful. You know, life is still there and it's beautiful. And I think as long as we hold on to the fact that we're here and breathing, and how phenomenally amazing that is, that's beautiful. And then I love to end on this image, because I was in a show, and it was the Art and Science Museum, and they had a planetarium dome, and they projected my work on the planetarium dome. And for me, that was the most phenomenal experience. And ever since then, I was hoping there would be an architect in the audience who would take note of this and how nice it looked. So put that out there into the ether. And if you have questions, I'm here to answer them. And also you can look on my website for details about specific works. Thank you.